Good afternoon, everybody. Christine Barconi here in the NBC4i Streaming Center. Joining me right now is Dr. Tiana Snyder. She is with Nationwide Children's Hospital. She's a pediatric psychologist. Correct, Dr. Snyder?
That's right.
Awesome. So I'm bringing her on today because I want to talk to her about not, so they're calling them pandemic babies, not babies who were conceived during the pandemic, but those who were born anywhere from the past year to the past 6 months, and how their lives are a lot different than normal babies would be in their first year of life. Haven't had a whole lot of interaction with people probably outside their bubble or their family. If they do go out, which is probably rare, they see people with masks. So I want to talk about the impact, if any, this is going to have on their lives and development. What are your thoughts on this, Dr. Snyder?
Yeah, I know this has been a common concern for a lot of parents and caregivers that I'm seeing. I work in a primary care center, so we see a lot of infants, especially. And so this is a common concern that's come up. And hopefully I can provide some reassurance and some recommendations for kind of how to move forward and how to address some of these concerns.
And what are the have you been telling your patients about this?
Well, the good news is that for those 0 to 2 year old children, a lot of the socialization really occurs in the home with that immediate family or with those caregivers. So, for the most part, as long as there's one attentive adult that's in the family, we really don't expect to see a lot of negative impact on their socialization or social skills and things like that.
Not even with learning how to play with younger kids if they don't have siblings?
Yeah, even, at this young age, a lot of the play is just parallel play. And so there might be playing with a certain activity and maybe they're playing next to another child, but they're not yet doing that associative or kind of pretend play with children yet. And so even with the play skills, that's really going to be completed with the parents or maybe with siblings at home. And so that's still something that the immediate family could be able to provide.
All right, so I told you before we got started that I wanted to show you this video. I got this story idea because I've seen this viral TikTok video sound, so I kind of want to show you this and get your reaction to it. Here we go.
If you're a pandemic baby and you've been in quarantine your whole life, so you get overstimulated by because all the strangers that you see have masks on and you've never really had a play date, your hands.
So that's basically the sound people are using with their kids, and their kids are kind of looking around, or they'll play that sound while they're taking them on walks and different things like that. I have four nieces and nephews, and it didn't seem too uncommon. You know, when they're little like that, they're kind of always doing that. What's your reaction?
Yeah, I actually think that's a really typical response for an infant that age. And so I think seeing that video, there's nothing that I would be overly concerned about. And I think just having that playtime and that interaction like you typically would with your child or your infant at home is really going to be the most important thing moving forward.
And you said that's kind of ages 0 to 4 years old that you're talking about here?
So really ages 0 to 2,
Two,
and
sorry.
then kind of in that 2 to 5, 3 to 5 year old range, those more preschool ages, that's when you might see a little bit of maybe a little bit more anxiety or just kind of not knowing what to do in some of those social situations. But kids are really resilient and they're usually even better able to adjust than us as adults and as parents. And so I would imagine that after just a few minutes of being in a social situation that maybe they've never been in before, that they're going to adapt really quickly.
What about those children who may have started going to preschool, your 4 and 5 year olds during this pandemic, but their parents kind of held back? What is your advice for them to make sure they are socialized properly if they don't, have any siblings?
It is definitely tougher if there's no siblings in the home. Again, the good news is that parents can really kind of fill in some of that role and some of that piece of socialization. I mean, you kind of got to channel your inner child and pretend to be a kid again, but kind of following the child's lead, doing some of that pretend or that make believe play is really what those kids need at this age. And I think it also really depends on the family or the caregiver's comfort with maybe going outside of the home. And so if you're comfortable with it, you could definitely go to parks, maybe try and arrange some outdoor play dates, bundle up, wear a mask and follow some of those protocols that are appropriate. But those are some options that might still be available to some families if they feel comfortable.
Is there any kind of concerning behavior that parents should be on the lookout for, though? However, if they are noticing it, what are some symptoms or signs of they should be looking out for?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I would say that there's always going to be ups and downs, and so there's going to be an adjustment period, probably in most new social situations for a lot of kids those ages. But in general, if things aren't getting better after a couple of days of maybe going back to preschool and they're really having a hard time adjusting and a hard time separating, and maybe that's going on for a week or maybe even longer, and the child's really tearful, or maybe complaining even of stomach aches or headaches or just some other kind of physical complaints, especially in those younger kids or even school age kids, those might be some things to look out for. Also, maybe some difficulties sleeping, that can definitely be a sign of some anxiety or just some worries and stress that might not yet be resolving on its own. And that would be something to talk to the pediatrician about. And then they could make a decision or a referral to see if you need to talk with a specialist.
All right. Thank you so much. Anything else that you would like to add about these kids who are growing up in something none of us have ever experienced before?
No, I think for parents and caregivers, we also want to be mindful of our own stress level. And so I actually worry a little bit more about the parents who are raising these children during a pandemic and making sure that they're taking time for themselves and taking care of themselves, and using their support systems as they can, even if it's through digital media and FaceTime and video chats and things like that. That just kind of being mindful of your own emotional state is probably going to be really important so that you can take the best care of your infant and your children.